Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. We are talking Philadelphia Eagles. Boy, oh boy, this one is going to be fun for lots of reasons. But definitely, I think your favorites for the NFC East, which is drawing the biggest discrepancy between sort of the way the market sees this team, the way I've seen some, kind of analytical projections, the way that kind of the true hardcores feel about this team versus just sort of the general, kind of temperature out there in the space. The Eagles, of course, are coming off of one of the most memorable collapses in the regular season last year, topped off with a embarrassing playoff loss that costs a lot of people jobs and put Nick Sirianni on the hot seat less than, 18 months after he probably should have won the freaking
I want a
Super Bowl.
percentage, Drew. And I don't have an answer for this. I just want you to kind of put your brain to it. What percentage of teams not lose, because this has happened, the Eagles lost both their coordinators to coaching jobs in the past. What percentage of teams get to the end of the year and fire both the coordinators? 2 coordinators are fired at the end of the year. How often does that happen in the league?
Shit, man.
I mean, like 1 or 2 teams a year tops, where they wipe the whole, or without losing the head coach. I'm not counting, when you wipe the whole coaching staff, that happens.
Oh yeah. No, I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant. Yeah. Especially in a year where, especially in their first year of service.
Well, so now
both guys were in their first year as replacement coordinators, and they both got fired. Yeah.
Take it another step.
That may be like 1 in
3?
Yeah.
Because they essentially had 2 defensive coordinators at certain times.
Yeah, you're right.
Everybody's gone. We're scrapping it. We fucked up.
I guess like the key question is how much of the firing was related to those individuals not doing a good job versus some of the bar being too high from the previous year, where they had a very easy schedule. Because I really think that telling the story and doing the autopsy of the 2023 Eagles starts in the beginning of 2022, where they lit the world on fire. They were like, I think the last team to, with a perfect record. They had an MVP candidate breakout season out of Jalen Hurts. They had an easy 1-2 waltz to the Super Bowl, and then went toe-to-toe with the mighty Kansas City Chiefs and Pat Mahomes, and probably could have, should have won. And all of that was kind of on the heels of the NFC being very down, their schedule having no good quarterbacks, and a lot of players got compensated, it got elevated, expectations went up, ratings went up, and it was probably a little too fast and a little bit too aggressive of an upgrade on a lot of those different units, players, expectations. And I think when they started the season and they were scraping together wins out to a 5-0 start, there was a little bit of confirmation that the upgrades were correct, when in fact there were cracks and then injuries. And then truly they went to, we know this, they went to schedule hell.
And
at long last,
a bad place
after having 25-ish games where they really played no one in a row except for the Chiefs. They finally drew a stretch with the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Niners, the Cowboys, and that broke them. And they never recovered. Their final 4 games against the Seahawks, Giants, Cardinals, Giants were also quite bad. They could not kind of get the ship righted. But the schedule hell that they had in that middle of the season was as tough as it ever is for any team ever. And it, they won the games against the Cowboys, Chiefs, and Bills. It just, then they broke. And it was a momentum swing of the highest order. And it swung all the way to everybody getting fired except for Sirianni, who is now on the very hot seat, right?
Yeah, this was a 10-1 team after it was a fun game, the Buffalo game. And then, whatever. It was like you got the shit kicked out of you by the Niners. That happens to people. It's such his life. But then to follow it up with the Cowboys game was rough, and it was in Jerry World. It's a tough divisional opponent. It was one of the better teams in the league at times. But the last four, like not being able to right the ship and go 3-1, if not 0 or 4-0 versus Seattle, New York, Arizona, New York was tough. And then you get what you get, and you end up really laying a freaking egg versus another. All these NFC teams heading into the playoffs. How many teams were there that had that? Don't want to play this team, because it feels like it was Green Bay, Tampa, and the Rams. It was like,
who you really wanted to play was the Eagles.
You wanted to play the higher seeded teams. Those were the teams that were coming in weak, and obviously not the Niners, but the Eagles and Cowboys. Yeah, they were ripe for the picking. Obviously, for some of these lower teams. So yeah, very, very, very bad end of the season.
So what? Talk
about the Desai thing. The Desai Patricia thing got weird too, where there was rumors and articles written about like subterfuge and sabotage between them.
Yeah,
where Patricia was like, petitioning behind the scenes that he should be doing things, and then he did, and it turned out just as bad.
Or worse,
we just we just never had a grip on this team late in the season on either side of the ball.
Here's my take. The inclusion of Patricia in anything was such an egregiously bad decision that it makes me think Sirianni doesn't know what he's doing. Right? Sure. Because like an armchair casual observer could have been like, wait, what's the pencil guy doing here?
Yeah, I remember this guy. We don't want him on our team.
What's the rocket scientist doing here? He's not gonna make things better for us. Get him out of there. Wait, why is he getting elevated? Wait, why is he getting more responsibility? Like, what is happening? Right? Like, I thought it was just atrocious kind of leadership from top down in every way, and I never really give Desai a chance to learn on the job or do anything. And then the Brian Johnson thing, like, yes, you can criticize aspects of his scheme, but I think most of the offense falling on its face was that Jalen Hurts just got hurt and he wasn't as effective. And his running game was a huge part of what made him so dynamic as far as moving the chains, getting the, kind of extra opportunities by converting fourth downs. And he just couldn't do that anymore. And they could still sneak, but his elusiveness, his mobility just wasn't there because of the injuries he was dealing with, from what I could tell. And it was a weird, kind of falling apart at the seams in a lot of ways. And somehow Sirianni survived it. But did you feel like there were schematic issues that could have been solved by better coaching on offense or defense, or do you feel like it was literally just they are who we thought they were in a lot of ways, with some of the old coverage, some of the shitty linebackers, some of the fragility on offense when you don't have a quarterback who's healthy?
I mean, some of the fragility, the bad scheme on the defense. We'll call it that. Like, we didn't have a good grip on what we wanted to be as a defense here. That wasn't helping. But yeah, the injuries on offense hitting into a tough part of the schedule combined with that was a recipe for disaster. And you just ended up on the longest part of variance with losing everything. Like, you just never really got a good win there from then on all the way into the playoffs. So yeah, injuries at the most important position. Maybe a little bit of attrition at that strong front five. And the defense not really having a good game plan for most of those games against good teams, good offenses. Like, if you are a good defense, you need to be able to put together a good game plan and a good performance against good offense. Otherwise, you're not a good defense. And we saw it against, Dallas and San Francisco. It's like, is this a good defense? The corners matter. And I mean, I think if anything else, they did a good job of self-reflection and said, like, hey, we might not have really, really good corners anymore. Should we draft some? And God bless them. They had the right guys fall into their lap, apparently. They might have got the two best corners in the draft, honestly. So they're trying to fix the problems they know they have, but it's a quick turnaround in this league. Everyone else is doing it as well. And if those things don't materialize instantly, they'll take a step back and maybe they shouldn't be favorites here.
Interesting. Okay, so is it fair to say that the true strength and the true, kind of fair numbers for the Eagles are somewhere between the lows that they exceeded in 2022 and the highs that they couldn't live up to in 2023?
Yeah, it's probably close.
Okay. Do you think that there are aspects in-house that carried over from last year's collapse that could cast a pall on this team? Because one of the truths of a lot of that aggressive a collapse is that the leadership in the locker room is a problem. And it starts and ends with Hurts, as he's their most important player and their most highly compensated player.
Yeah.
The defensive side of the ball is loaded with Georgia Bulldogs, who have enormous pedigree, but have, other than Carter, not really lived up to it on the field.
No.
And you have a weird situation where it's possible that your best two players might be wide receivers. And even though, like, ultimately the strength of the Super Bowl runner-up Eagles was offensive line, pass rush, like trenches, like Jason Kelce moving on now, even one less kind of stable voice in the locker room to help, kind of a young group come together. Like, do you think there is a hangover from how bad that collapse was, is really what I'm getting at?
I think you have good enough coaching to avoid that. I know we just said, hey, this is a team that fired 3 coordinators essentially, but you have good enough head coach, and you've brought in a very stabilizing force in Vic Fangio. I think we're going to be all right. I don't know how I feel about Kellen Moore. I think this is going to be more of a, hey, let's see what we got, because boy, he didn't have much of a chance last year with the wide receiver room falling apart like it did. So it'll be really interesting to see what the offense looks like, because, hey, here's two, maybe the best duo. You might have the best duo, 1-2. There's a few candidates for that, but this is definitely one of them. You have a very plus quarterback. You have a good enough offensive line. And here's the key: is go prove that you're a good offensive coordinator, and you have a good head coach, a good support system. But I think between Sirianni and Fangio, like, we're gonna be all right. We've got leadership that's gonna stabilize that. And they made some nice moves. They made some nice draft picks. They added some pieces in the spots, and it's nice that in the losing Kelce, losing a running back every year. They lose a running back. That's just how they operated. But losing Kelce, losing your running back room, and losing some defensive linemen, it's like everything was accounted for already. Like, oh, we had money set aside for a running back. We had a center in training. We had all these young rotational pieces in the front seven that we can just plug in. Like, it feels like they could go without missing a step. They just can't have that collapse again.
Okay. So I count me as concerned about leadership vacuum. Fletcher Cox is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Hassan Reddick, for what it's worth, who's your most accomplished pass rusher, he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Not that he's exactly conducting himself like a professional, but he's still just a stable vet. He's gone.
No, it's Kelce and Cox are the ones.
Kelce,
that's your leadership.
Kelce, surely.
And here's the thing about Kelce.
Yeah,
I think you see him in the building all year.
Really?
He's still there. Like, he still goes and hangs out. I think not only is he in the building, I think he is 2 injuries away from playing this year.
Oh, wow.
I think there's like a 20% chance he plays if it's like, oh, the Eagles are fucked and they need a center.
Okay.
Because we got to kick this guy out to guard again.
Okay. There is one stable organizational piece besides Hurts, and it's Howie Roseman, the GM.
That's a good call.
We've had a little bit of a course correction in terms of how much laudification, is that a word? How much credit he got for putting together this team that burst on the scene and went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. He was, he consistently feels like he gets the better of every deal. and the better of every other GM. And if you pick up the phone when Howie Roseman's on the other side and you're another GM, like you're the sucker, right? Like
how we do it. How we do it.
How we do it. And then he does something that feels like he got a little too cute. He paid Saquon Barkley for some reason.
I'm actually opposite on this. I don't hate it.
Okay. You don't hate it?
Saquon Barkley coming into the league and still at his age has like top 1 running back potential in the league. He's kind of played for some dog water teams, man. Like this is a better situation than maybe he's been in ever.
Sure.
Especially from a run blocking offensive line, a quarterback and an offense who runs a lot of schemes that, hey, we're going to do some mesh and we're going to do some RPO and we're going to do this, where the defense and the linebackers really have to be thinking about, is Jalen going to be holding onto this ball either as a runner or a passer? And then there's a huge lane. Whereas he could be more efficient than maybe he's ever been before. I don't love paying a running back, but the fact that they did it after just kind of cycling through, average to slightly above average guys for a few years and making them look good. If that's what they did for those guys, what can they do for somebody with immense talent that's still on, he's still close to the right side of his age. He's not too old yet. So I don't hate it. Especially with what they had. Like, what were you going to do? Get another wide receiver? You're pretty solid there. You had a plan in place to put together the rest of your offensive line, which is, the Cam Jurgens stepping in. You have some good pieces on the offensive line. You have a quarterback. I mean, where else were you going to pick up players, I guess, besides more rotational guys on the defense, more maybe a linebacker too, but they got Devin White.
That felt like a bad move too to me.
He's got his place. He's a good enough coverage guy, which I think they're going to need.
Okay. I guess for me, it's not, well, what would you rather do with that money? It's more of just, I hated it because I don't love the fit, player and style. And what I mean by that is Saquon Barkley defines boomer bust running back. Typical game log for him, -1, -1, 1, -150, right? You know what? That does not in any way, shape, or form mesh well with a team that is just trying to get a couple of yards so that they could set up an easy third down conversion, and if not, an easy fourth down.
And right? I guess that's what I'm arguing is, was that more of a situation stuff? Because it certainly wasn't.
Think so. This was Barkley's. This was his MO in college.
I don't think that it was.
Oh, boomer bust.
He was electric. I watched some Penn State games. I don't know that was his. He was just kind of I'm going to look now. He had some tough games against some tougher opponents, but it wasn't just like 2 or 3.
I'm not saying boomer bust in a given game. I'm saying boomer bust in a given opportunity.
Oh, as far as like touch, long, like
given touch. And so
guys like that, like Barry Sanders, no good.
I will remind you at some point this season that you compared Saquon Barkley to Barry Sanders.
I'm going to remind you when he has like 1,500 yards. No, and I do wonder if a lot of that is just. I'd like to actually go back and look at his.
Can't wait for his worst game this season. I'm just gonna be like, how'd you like? Like Barry Sanders out there,
Philadelphia Barry. No, but just his yards before impact, being touched.
Sure,
I think that's going to improve greatly. Where it's not going to be as much of that. If I'm dead wrong, and quickly we're going to have to downgrade what this offense is. Okay. But what they've been able to get out of lesser running backs, I think he's going to be good.
Okay.
Sanders good. There's the flag.
I similarly I ultimately there's been a good amount of what Howie Roseman has done in the last 2 years that feels too cute, and Barkley's one of them. I would say that Devin White is one of them. Bringing back CJ might be one of them. Drafting all these Georgia players feels like he's just continuing to double down on why my evaluation on the Georgia defense is correct. This is not a sum of the parts. They're all very good. Well, we'll see. We now have backup contributions potentially from Nakobe Dean and Nolan Smith Jr. Just keeping an eye on those guys and whether they make the roster. Jordan Davis is going to need to take a major step forward this year and be an every down guy, which I don't think there's been any evidence that he can. Brandon Graham moves into a rotational pass rush role, which is probably good for him, but that means you're going to need Milton Williams to do something. And I have no idea if he's capable of that. And I don't know. I mean, like for a team that felt like a super team on paper, as you kind of just recognized everybody and kind of clearly understood what their contributions were, there are questions and holes now. Like, I don't know that I feel like this is a surefire top 2 offensive line anymore, even though I have a great rating for their tackle, Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, like probably the best tackle duo in the NFL. I don't know that that's even really controversial. But, you know, the interior looks like there could be some learning curve. Dickerson, Juergens, Steen, okay. Like, you know, there could be a little bit less effectiveness in the tush push. Sure, there should be. There almost certainly will be in the absence of Kelsey because of how effective he specifically was in that maneuver. But yeah, I mean, it looks to me like there's enough questions and enough of a leadership issue that if they get off to a rocky start, if it's even a 500 start through 6 games or something, like I don't know that they're going to be the type of team that everybody has cool heads that, you know, that like the Bills last year, right? A couple bad injuries at all 3 levels of their defense, and then they just can't win games. They get halfway through the season.
Well, true.
And
Let's
their head down.
take a step back and think about what you said there. Like, hey, I'm an NFL team, any NFL team. I just had bad injuries through all 3 levels of my defense. Like, things aren't going to go well for me. It doesn't matter who I am.
The Bills turned it around and they won their division at the end. I'm just saying, like, an arc of a season that doesn't start out with success for the Eagles, to me, feels dicey.
But at the end,
that starts out with lots of success and then turns negative feels dicey, right? Like, they kind of need a season where they win 3 out of every 4 games and they don't have an extended losing streak. Right?
I hate to stamp that on a team that just like, because a team is it's always morphing and changing. There's so many different pieces. We have 2 different coordinators. We have a bunch of different players. I hate to stamp like a tendency on a team from a small sample, like a year or 2. So I hate to say, I get what you're saying, and it resonates with me a little, but I hate to give a team a stamp like that and try to use that to handicap a rating or how I feel, or even like how I should be flowing in compared to the market with them. I get what you're saying. It does check out, but I just hate to use that for betting.
Yeah. I mean, for betting, it's basically like, hey, they've lost 2 in a row. Like, is this the buy low, or just let this thing turn into
and I think it's a case by case thing, because there's a lot of like if you're listening to podcasts, Drew just put his hands up like tasting grass and shit, like
it's like, this is gonna get gross. I'm gonna walk away from it.
There's plenty of those like that. The best bets you make are the ones you don't make.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Let's rate and let's do I don't know. I think this is the toughest QBOC.
So much trouble with this.
I think this might be the toughest because I want to put a huge asterisk on late season Hurts last year for injury, and I don't know how.
That's what I did. So I went higher than I thought maybe I should have on both, because I was willing to say like Kellen Moore. Maybe I haven't really seen it. Maybe it's more of a name than actual results on the field for the most part. Yeah. And the same thing with Hurts, but you can go both ways. Like, shit, he's such a weapon, especially with the short running game, the running game in general, the versatility. If he's healthy, he's very, very good. 7. I went with a 7.
I'm at 7 also. Okay. So here's some of my thinking on landing at 7 ultimately. Would I trade Hurts and Kellen Moore for Dak Prescott and Schottenheimer? I'd think about it, but probably not. Would I trade Hurts and Kellen Moore for Trevor Lawrence and his situation. No. Would I trade them for for if I was
what about Love and LaFleur?
Yes. If I was Tampa, yes, I would trade
say I find a number that's higher, and I would trade him for Tampa and LaFleur. Burrow and that offense, Lamar and that offense. Yeah, like there's teams that definitely and that's why those are 8.5s.
Sure. Okay. So if I was any AFC South team, I would make the move. If I was any NFC South team, I would make the move. And I would bring in Moore and Hurts for my guys. But not Dallas, not Jacksonville, and definitely not Houston. So it has to be lower than Houston and Dallas, and maybe on par with Jacksonville. So that's where I'm at 7. And ultimately, like, I still think that the X factor of the entire Philly offense being the quarterback sneak, and that being some part Kelsey and some part Hurts. You still have Hurts, and so he should still be able to get you some hard yards. And I mean, shit, man, we're 8 months away from him being the MVP favorite at 10-1 Eagles. He was
a couple times,
and
2 different years. We had
2 years, yeah. And so, ultimately, I know that doesn't mean much other than a reflection of how have you done this season, largely win, but it still is like notable that you have found ways to win. So 7 for me. Skill position group for you is. This is also very tough.
This is incredibly tough. 7.5, and okay. I was higher on Barkley than you. So I'm wondering if again, maybe I should just put that on paper. Barkley will have a Barry Sanders year. He'll either have an electric year where he's putting up sick numbers, or he retires early.
I have an 8.
One way or the other.
I'm higher than you on this skill group.
It's such a good wide receiver duo.
Such a good wide receiver. And I like the tight end.
Outside of that, I like the tight end. It's been a lot of injuries. I have a little lower number on him than I think some people do. And then the wide receiver depth is
very fragile.
This is what's keeping me from being too high. So love the tight end,
okay,
but not putting him in the higher echelon of tight ends. Obviously the 1-2 is electric, but from there it gets kind of tough. So Paris Campbell, well, if Paris Campbell pans out as a nice slot guy and that works out, here we go. Other than that, your depth is like Jacob Harris, John Ross, Joseph Ngata. Like there's some names after A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith that I'm not super excited about seeing in the field. So it's a little fragile for my liking. Yeah. And then the same thing after, like Kenny Gainwell, Will Shipley. Like the running back room has problems as well if Saquon's hurt.
Okay.
Although, and I've said it how many times, like they got so much out of those running backs every year. Maybe it doesn't matter. This was the very, very toughest for me. And I had to carry it over. I had to go with an 8.
Really?
As one of I have a couple.
This is going to end up being your best offense in the NFL.
No. Yeah, it's
going to be up there.
I was going to say I have Detroit higher. I have KC higher. It's close though. It's crazy because like once I got done with these ratings, I realized how high I had this team. I'm like, oh, this is like the 5th best team in the league. What are we doing?
Like, here's the problem is that we have a lot of evidence that these guys need to start like close to what is probably a ceiling rating.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They have the best wide receiver tandem in the league. They have the best tackle tandem in the league. Got to reflect that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Mailata and Lane Johnson, probably my number one tackle.
Yeah.
Landon Dickerson, very good guard. Cam Jurgens, and I've seen this reported and written about more times than I can possibly imagine. Cam Jurgens was always the plan to be the center. Now, it's one thing to, you draft your shortstop of the future and he sits in AAA and that's fun. And as soon as, the guy retires, he comes up and he's your shortstop. But this guy's been playing guard, listening to Kelsey call out the offense for years now. 2 years, full years of guard play, I think. So like
Okay.
it hasn't just been sitting on the sidelines and playing with the twos. Like he's been right next to Kelsey, learning from him. Everybody pushed that as like that's an important thing. I've never coached an offensive line. I've never played offensive line. I assume they're right. I'm giving that some credence and hoping he's a good center. I'm assuming it's a step down from Kelsey, but at the same time, I think they know what they're doing, and that seems on paper that sounds like a really good plan. And then Tyler Steen. I don't have Tyler Steen rated terribly high.
Okay.
He had some limited actions, and he, like I said, Cam Jurgens.
1 weak link on an O line is not as big a deal. Especially
Cam Jurgens moves over, he goes in. So.
You know what you absolutely can count on Zach Barkley doing, because he's been doing it his entire life.
Running behind Tyler Steen.
His pass protection help. Yeah.
So you have that, and then Mekhi Becton is depth. He can do a lot worse than a guy drafted that high. Matt Hennessy. You have some depth here too. It's still just such a good offensive line on paper. If Jurgens plays even, half as good as the reporters think he's gonna, so I had to start this super high again. I don't see how it falls out of my top 5 offensive linemen.
Okay, I'm kind of I'm at 7 for O line. I'm in the same level as Atlanta and Indy, so kind of right in that. Okay, so you're same level as Atlanta, but higher than me. You were higher with me with Indy as well. You were higher with Indy.
Indy
as well.
is a 7.5. Atlanta's an 8 for me.
Okay, I'm at 7, and it's largely because I have questions about the interior, and I know your points were fair. Like it's all reasonable. I just there's a continuity question mark, as well as just a I'm worried that the whole looked so good last year because everybody was good. 2 years ago, especially. Right?
Jeff Stoutland has been their offensive line coach for like 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
Like having the continuity of him, and generally, obviously everyone knows Callahan, but he's looked on as one of the best offensive line coaches in the league too. So you got a lot of continuity outside of Kelsey. Okay. And it sounds like Kelsey worked with this kid a lot. So if they don't absolutely shit the bed at center this year, I don't see how it's going to happen.
Okay. Your offensive percentile is 74th. I'm 73rd. This is going to be one of the best offenses we talk about just because of the completeness across those 3 units and the way we've set up the weighting.
Massive fragility.
Yes. Right. With probably nowhere to go up.
Yeah. No, I don't see how this is like
Jalen Hurts could actually earn MVP consideration through half a season. I don't think I'm going much higher than 7.
No, we have to have a week where like Paris Campbell wins FedEx Air Player of the Week to move this up, or legit what moves this offense up?
What's that?
Somebody
Barry
on TV,
Sanders level performance out of
someone on TV compares Saquon Barkley to Barry Sanders. If someone does that, you'll never hear the end of it from me.
I bet you could Google it and find a blog somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure someone's made that just when he jukes around or so. Oh, that's Sanders like
Barry Sanders.
I have high hopes for him this year.
Okay. Run stop. Defense. We're gonna go from high to meh.
Indeed.
Where are you at for a run stop?
This is a 4.5.
Okay. I thought about 4.5. I ended up at 5 just because I kind of I get it. I get what they're trying to do, and it might work.
Nakobe Dean, you dogged on him. He can tackle. Jordan Davis.
Yeah, he's going to be on the field.
He is on rundowns. I think if it's a running down, you'll see him out there part of the time. He's gonna be a rotational piece. He is not going to be out there on 3rd and long. He can't cover. Jordan Davis is a plus, and then the rest of the guys that are like pass rush, I have okay. So it's below average to average is your run stop for the most part.
I'm at 4.5 for run stop as well. Did I say I'm at 4.5? I'm at 5. My bad. Pass rush
6.
I'm at 5.5.
Huff is probably a downgrade from.
Jalen Carter is a plus pass rusher.
Much.
Is there another one?
So Huff isn't that much of a downgrade. It's more of like a long game thing where you'll have him longer. Bryce Huff had a really good pressure rate. That was a good. That was a good off. He goes from a good defensive pass rush to another team with a good defensive pass rush. He gets to work with Carter. Josh Sweat. It's another good edge piece. It's good. It's just not not great unless they show it to me.
Okay. I'm at not.
Nolan Smith. I don't know. What
I'm at 5.5. I'm barely above good. I'm barely above average there. What's your coverage number?
3.5.
Ooh, that's pretty low. Okay, so I bumped this because of Fangio specifically. I'm expecting you're going to get a lot less. You're going to get you have a negative number for Fangio?
No, I have a negative on Fangio in general.
Oh, hit me.
His schemes take time to implement.
Oh, okay.
We saw that. Somebody pointed that out. I wish I'd give them credit. But I saw it 2 different places where it's like, hey, it works, but it took 2 years every time. And I love Fangio. I think that's a great hire. I think that's a good stabilizing force here. But like Bradbury he's washed enough for like, hey, you're a safety, and now he's injured. Their coverage grade was like bottom 5 in the league last year. Like I said, there's some linebackers I don't think are going to help much in coverage. And then Slay has taken a step back. I don't think the CJ signing was all that great. Isaiah Rodgers could be something that gets this moved up. We haven't seen a lot of him because of the gambling suspension. I have a good grade on Blankenship, but other than that, it's a lot of negatives for me on the coverage grades.
Okay. I'm at 4.5 for coverage. I'm at 50th percentile for defense overall.
I think the coverage grade is the one.
Yours number sounds more right to me.
I know, but here's the thing: the coverage grade could move a lot based on how these rookies are implemented, and there's just a lot of question marks. Like I said, Isaiah Rodgers as probably a nickel, or maybe he might be your boundary guy. Honestly, I think that's probably where they end up putting him. And then you have, I don't know, Maddox, DeJean. I'm not sure who's going to end up where. I think we have a lot to learn about who's going to be slotted where, because there's about 7 guys that can be filling 4 or 5 spots. You got to decide how much you're going to use these rookies and how good they are. So this could shoot up if we get good play out of Rodgers, you get good play out of Maddox, if Slay looks less washed, if CJ was a good signing, if the rookies work. So I'm low, but that one can definitely come up. I'm at a 47th percentile defense.
Okay, what's their special teams number?
6.5. Okay. Jake Elliott's a good kicker.
Okay.
Isaiah Rodgers could be a good returner too. That's he was a good returner. They're looking at him for kick returns. He was good before his suspension. Brandon Mann's an okay punter, so it's above average, very much above average special teams unit.
Okay, intangibles.
6.5.
Yeah, that's a good number. Still a guy in Sirianni who's going to pick up the every nickel on the street in terms of advantage for in-game decision making. Yep. We are at the same total percentile, which is the 67th. Which is interesting. I don't know. We had some differences, but not much. Our final power numbers work out to big positive number. Big one. +6.
6.5 for me.
Holy shit.
Better than Dallas. And like I said, this probably only has one way to go, though, because as much as I might be able to upgrade the coverage unit, there's a greater chance I'm downgrading something on the offense eventually. So
first,
more often than not,
knob that you're likely to turn on the offense is QBOC, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, any injury to skill position or O-line is a big jump.
O-line tackle injury is a problem.
Yeah,
skill position groups do have a little bit of redundancy.
I did have some depth. I liked the O-line, but skill position, if you lose one of your top 2 wide receivers, that sucks in a big way. Obviously, didn't say that. So it's one of the better teams. I didn't think I'd be quite this high on them, but here we are.
Huh. What do we do about this?
I don't know.
The numbers are the numbers, man. You just got to decide what to do about it. I don't think we were being too favorable in anything except for potentially the QBOC. No idea. No, I honestly have no fucking clue if Kellen Moore is any good. None. He is the most vanilla offensive mind that I have ever tried to evaluate. And he had 2 good games at the beginning of his Dallas tenure where he really just showed special stuff and was like doing kind of high plus CV stuff. And then it immediately became Garrett was pissed that he wasn't getting credit for it. And he started getting his fingerprints all over that. And then that offense got stale. And then he got, then everybody got kind of.
That's where I'm so hesitant to really put a label on him because of what you said. We saw it like, oh shit, this is good. And then Garrett stepped in and made a mess of it. And then, we didn't get a big enough sample of an offensive line that was healthy and wide receiver room that was healthy with the quarterback to see it in, San Diego / Los Angeles, whatever. So I don't know. Like, he's a huge question mark. The guy could flop. He could be at the end of the year. We're like, oh fuck, that sucks for the Eagles. Like, he's getting a head coaching job now. He's gone. If it turns out really well, he's getting interviews.
Okay. Well,
I don't know. You come in here and you look really good because of your wide receiver duo. Saquon plays well. Your quarterback stays healthy. And you win the East, you get the 2nd seed, maybe the 1 seed, for sure he's getting interviews.
With bad organizations.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, better learn how to speak New Orleans, buddy.
There's a dialect down there, Andy.
Creole.
Yeah. Anyway, let's look at the schedule.
It's not bad, is it?
No, it's a 2nd place schedule.
It is a 2nd place schedule. Everyone plays Baltimore.
There's lots of NFC South on there.
So Baltimore is a road game. It's leading into an easier one. That's not an easy stretch at LA, at Baltimore. That's a
2 weeks after
stretch.
At Dallas too, yeah.
Yeah, at Dallas. So 3 out of 4 on the road against
at Cincy. If you want to go to 8, if you like, week 8 to week 13 is where they make her season is made or broken. And honestly,
as you talked about, like they do need to start strong, finish strong. So they got the schedule that Drew laid out as far as what would be good. Green Bay's not a gimme, even though they're favored there. That's a tough team. Atlanta, especially in my mind, is not a gimme. But after that, there's some very winnable games. Like you said, you got the New Orleans, the Tampas, you get the New York Giants. I don't think all that much of Jacksonville, especially on the road there. Washington twice, Washington late, Pittsburgh, Washington, New York, 3 out of your last 4. There's possibilities here.
I'm going to tell you what, man, your offense should be good enough to get you that win against Green Bay. That's the Friday night game in Sao Paulo.
Brazil.
Flying home, you're gonna have to deal with the travel, but you get 3 extra days to do it because it's Friday to Monday. I'll tell you what's nice about that week 2 Monday Night Football game, Andy. Kirk Cousins in primetime in the link. Not, now he is very used to that in week 2, as we covered already.
Yeah, so weird.
This is the 3rd year in a row that there's a Philly Kirk Cousins matchup in week 2 in primetime. But the key, I guess, is really just your numbers aren't going to be that far off from 3.5. You have 6 and 3.5 as your 2 power numbers, right? Or 6.5 and 3.5, you said?
Mm-hmm.
So you already have a 3-point gap. Add a little link home field advantage. Your numbers are going to say bet Philly. I would say that in general, Atlanta's defense against Philly's offense feels like a mismatch of awesome proportions. So Philly should be able to completely control that game. New Orleans.
What's your total there? 47?
51 for sure.
You think that less of Philly's defense? I think it's average-ish.
Yeah, I know, but they're up against a plus offense.
All right, let's say 49-50.
Look, so I'm only low on Atlanta because I was harder on their defense than you were.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk Philadelphia team total over 26.5 then.
That sounds about right.
It's probably a 27.
27, yeah.
That is a secret team total pod play 3, 7, 9 weeks early. Yeah.
I'll be in Greece. I'll be in Greece, so we could just lock that one in now because I don't even know if we'll be previewing week 2 in long format. But okay. A lot of travel early for them, particularly coming off of that Brazil trip. That said, they're better. They're a good enough offense that they should be able to beat Green Bay, Atlanta, New Orleans, and Tampa, and start out 4-0. And that should maybe help kind of stabilize things a little bit. Cleveland's a tough matchup for them. Giants is not. Since it's a tough matchup for them, Jags is interesting. Not really especially tough. They obviously have an advantage over Dallas, but not a huge one. Washington is, a pretty fair smash spot. And then Rams Baltimore is tricky. So I guess if things go a little sideways for them in say the Jags game, and then they lose their coin flips, Cincy, Dallas, Rams, Balto, that is like, let's just say for the sake of argument that they are 1-5 through that 6-week stretch, week 8 to week 13. Does the soft landing actually materialize? Or is that everybody quits on Sirianni?
I don't know. That's so hard to guess on shit like that. Like I said, you've got Sirianni and Fangio. I think we can get our shit together. But I mean, any team in the league talk about it's probably a 60-40 this team quits. I'd put them closer to 50-50. I like the coaching staff. I like the leadership.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's
any games or matchups?
That's where you bring Kelsey back in to rah-rah the troops.
Any games or matchups that you're especially licking your chops with here? I mean, they get 4 primetimers 3 primetimers at home. It's very, very difficult to go play at the link in primetime traditionally. And 2 of those games are Jacks and Washington. Ooh. Sunday Night Football, Doug Peterson makes his grand return.
Yeah, that's another one too, where Washington, with their lack of pass rushing coverage, like, hey, I'm not breaking news that Washington's a much worse team, but boy, they don't have anything on defense to try to stop what they're going to be doing here.
How far off is that number?
Like that 3 late looks a little silly because I have on a neutral, I'd have Philly by like 11 or 12.
It's out to 7, by the way.
Okay,
Philly is juiced to minus 115. So somebody's already shaping these numbers and these look-aheads, apparently.
That's fun. That's good.
Huh.
I'm not going to be betting look-aheads. I hate having money just laid out on those. The only time I did a look-ahead was, there was a weird one where they left some game of the year lines out open after a quarterback like ripped his ACL. And I hit something small. It wasn't big, but I remember finding it like in week 11, like, oh, I already bet this game. Good. That was CLV. I got CLV last night on the Trump speech. He never said dictator. Thanks, Trump. 10-1, you'd say dictator. Didn't work out.
Some other notes I have. It's a tough schedule travel wise, especially because it starts out with that Sao Paulo trip. It also includes a couple of tricky kind of clusters of travel, which is unusual for an East Coast centric team. Usually they don't have much question mark. No rest disadvantages other than the 1 day at disadvantage when they play the Saints. Week 3. Otherwise, they
only go west once, so they only have that. Dallas is middle. They only have to go west for the Rams game. Everything else is, just down to New York, down to Tampa. New Orleans is central-ish. I mean, it's still a longer flight, I guess, because it's so far south. But they don't have. It's not like they have one of these schedules where they got to go west 3 times or something. Because that shit happens.
It does. Yeah. Yeah, you're
not a bad schedule, but still, there's some tough spots.
You know what else is nice about this schedule? San Francisco's not on it.
Yeah, that's nice. You don't have San Francisco.
You know what else is nice?
Buffalo. You don't have Kansas City.
Detroit's not on it.
Yeah.
Kansas City's not on it.
Dallas,
Buffalo's
Green Bay,
not on it.
Baltimore. Dallas, Green Bay, Baltimore. And Cincinnati. I should give them some respect. 4 tough teams. One of them twice, and that's about it. The rest of them are, if you win 2 of those games, you should have 12 wins somehow.
Oh boy. So here's a key question for you. when the alert pops up on November 19th to bet the Eagles. I mean, bet the Cowboys to win the East. They will be sitting on extra rest, having just waxed the Commanders, probably.
And Philly is about to head out to the West Coast.
They're about to head out to the West Coast, take on the Rams, and then come back and play Baltimore. 2 tough ones.
McVay, Harbaugh.
They're about to give back too. Yeah, they're about to give back too, probably. And
are we trading? Are we? Should we be doing this on the Betfair Exchange instead? And then after that stretch,
dump all our Philly and add Dallas.
We dump Dallas and buy some Philly back.
Dump Dallas and buy Philly back. Yeah. Well, the time to dump Dallas, Dallas and buy Philly back is that Week 17 game where Philly's hosting Dallas, second to last game of the season. Like that's the opportunity to get right on all that shit, because that's going to make or break the division probably, unless Philly's just way the hell out there. I mean, like this schedule is pretty fucking favorable. Like my questions about Philly are all their defense. And there are very few elite quarterbacks on this list of teams, of opponents. Very few.
Just start with 2 in a row. No, I mean it's like 6 all year. Like you're like Lamar
and none of
Stafford,
like the absolute top,
Dak,
other than I guess maybe Lamar if you want to count
Lamar, Stafford, Dak, Burrow, Love, and whatever you think of. If nothing else, you're getting Cousins early.
Is there any world where you're buying Philly to win the NFC or the Super Bowl?
If Fangio's suddenly implemented everything and it's just working, like if the Fangio effect takes effect quicker than we hoped, and he's figured out who's, I think a big question and a big task for him is solving the packages and like who's on the field for what, because he has a lot of people, a lot of guys who will see the field in this defense, and you got to figure out who's out there for which situations and who can play with each other. Who are my best 11 for third and long? What's going to work for pass rush? What's going to work within my scheme with these guys? There's a lot of growing pains, but I mean, if we get to like pass the bye and the defense is really starting to click, like I said, I got such a high rating on this offense. If that defense is ascending, it's a bye, because that's definitely our area of concern.
It might look like it's ascending though, because they're playing Bryce Young, Russell Wilson, Daniels, and Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I think I need to probably see it versus like maybe the Burrow game. If the secondary looks good against Burrow and those receivers on the road, that's probably a buy signal.
Okay. I like that. I like that call. There's whiffs of 2022 in this schedule, man. Not quite as easy, but there's whiffs.
Feels like 22.
There's whiffs, man.
Good team.
What to do?
Yeah, I'm not pumped about taking anything pre-season on this right now.
How do you think they'll match up against the likes of the Niners in the playoffs?
The defense is going to have to come a long way from where I think it is right now.
Okay. How do you think?
Like
I
said,
they're going to match up with the Lions in the playoffs? Like that. Like, here you go. Right? Let me set this up. Let me set this up a little more cleanly. You ready?
Yeah.
Lions are your 2 seed. Eagles are your 3 seed. They both handle their wild card opponents. 2 versus 3 divisional weekend in Detroit.
That's a pretty good offense. Like, I'm assuming if you've had a good year, the run stop has improved to a little above average. The coverage is at least average. Total 54.
Okay, but I mean, like in that specific matchup, I guess just neutrally now, if everything goes the way we expect, you're into Detroit as the home team there.
What's your line there? Detroit at home.
It's probably 2.5.
I was going to say, I have the teams rated very close.
Yeah, same.
So Detroit by 2, probably. I don't think I'd be taking a position. I'd see if that total tick down a little.
And now if it's in Philly 2-3 and your Jared Goff is outdoors in the elements.
Philly -1. Yeah.
I'd lay that in a heartbeat.
Probably
against Goff outside.
Goff outside in the playoffs. Yeah.
At the link in the dog masks and all that
They're
shit.
throwing beers at you.
Yeah, it's pretty obviously Philly spot. So then if we can say if Philly gets a top 2 seed, then they're very live. Obviously, that's not breaking news. They take care of business in the 2-3. Does Kirk Cousins get his revenge hosting the the Eagles in the 1-2 in the NFC Championship game?
That would be a fun one. God, there's so many fun stars. There'd be someone. I don't think it matters as long as we don't get stupid teams just winning dumb games and ending up making a playoff run. Between Atlanta, Philly, San Francisco, Green Bay, Detroit, and even Tampa, if they're good again. There's just so many fun stars in the offense for the NFC. Like there's the Rams again, Seattle again, Dallas.
Yeah.
Like playoffs should be
Bears.
good. NFC playoffs are fun. We had some fun games. Green Bay, San Francisco was great.
No, I completely agree. I guess
honestly, Detroit, San Francisco was great.
Yeah, I think we got a long way to go to get to the NFC West, but I'm doing a lot of my thinking about how the seeding is going to break, expecting that 3rd or 4th is probably where the Niners land if they win the West, just because that schedule is such just a shit show. And so kind of being in the mix as a contender, if you're Detroit or Philly or Atlanta, I guess, means that
stop it.
It means that like you're thinking 1 or 2. You're thinking like home game week 2, you know, round 2 of the playoffs, which is big. It's going to be big. Okay. Current prices for Philly, by the way, they're about 6-1 to win the NFC right now. That kind of feels bettable, I got to tell you, with this number. Fuck, man. Especially if that first 4 games, I guess it really kind of comes down to, are they going to beat Green Bay in the neutral game week 1? If they do, they're probably starting 4-0, in my opinion. And I just generally am I'm not like trying to hold on to this to the bitter end, but God, man, 6-1 for the Eagles right now, knowing that there's a good, decent chance that people mid-season have just convinced themselves, oh yeah, the Eagles are good again.
I think there's decent reasons to be like skeptical. You lose team leaders, like you lose Reddick, you lose
Kelsey,
Cox.
Yeah.
You have a big turnover at both coordinator spots. I've already mentioned it does take some time for teams to fully implement Vic Fangio defense, and the offense has to maintain the level we saw when it was good last year. So it does take a lot, but I mean, you can say that for any team that's supposed to be good. Like, hey, things still have to go right for you. So I'm close because I didn't think I'd rate this team this high. But when you tunnel vision each group like this and you put your numbers to it and then you add them all together, sometimes you realize, well, this team's better than
combined with the easy schedule.
No, because I think if you just try to put a number to it, you're putting too many biases towards things.
Sure, 100%.
I like doing it this way for sure.
Eagles are a 10.5 win team in the win total market. It is over. It has been juiced to -142. So this is effectively an 11 win market compared to the 10 win market for the Dallas Cowboys. You're out on that? No alt win over?
No. If I'm betting them, I'm betting them to win the NFC.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in complete and total agreement there. The only bet to make would be 6-1, and I'm excited to run the Sims now and see what kind of number we get. Because, like, ultimately, if they make the playoffs, we're gonna have a good percentage of them winning the East. That's how they're getting into the playoffs. And then the rest of the make the playoff wild card still probably takes them through a decently favorable path where you're going to have them going up against the NFC South opponent early on. And I know they lost that last year, but they're going to be in that, in that game, surely. So they're going to be in the second round of the playoffs a lot, and there's a decent chance that's going to be a home game. That means there's a decent chance they're going to be in the NFC title game. I don't think the numbers once we're done are going to tell us that 6-1 is not a bet.
So do you remember the bets we made on them in 22?
It was coach of the year 20-1, and it was most wins.
First seed, best record. Record.
Yeah.
I think you
10 to
joked,
1,
it sounds like
right?
22. Like, I think those are similar. I'm going to bet them to win the NFC, to have the top record in the NFC, top record in the league, and the 1 seed. Those are bets I'll look at. I'm going to go price those out.
Okay. That's fun.
Because I think that's if things go right, that's what happens. Especially with some fragility with San Francisco.
Eagles most win is 15-1 right now. Eagles last winless team. I'm sorry. Last undefeated team. Eagles last undefeated team is 17-1 right now. Wouldn't it be something if they did that like 3 years in a row? I don't think they were the last undefeated team last year, were they? That was like Miami, maybe. I don't remember.
I'm not sure. They were like 8-1 at one point, 10-1, maybe even. Yeah, it was 10-1, and then they ended up 11-6.
Okay. All right.
Does that add up? 11-6.
They lost to the Jets kind of early-ish in the season, I want to say. They lost to Zach Wilson, right? Yeah. Okay. That checks out. All right, sounds good. Let's marinate. We need to get through ratings on the Lions we at least need to get ratings on the Lions and the Niners, and then we can come up with a fair here.
Yeah, I think once we get halfway through, I'll have a lot of my other numbers, even for the teams that we haven't, previewed yet. I'll have those numbers tightened up, and we can actually run some sims. So I think once we're through four divisions, we'll be able to run them.
Did you see the Niners NFC price? Don't look at it. Just guess it.
225.
Oh, wow. Good guess. 244.
That's tough, isn't it? With Green Bay, Detroit, Philly.
Really tough.
And the NFC South having to put somebody fourth.
Yeah. I feel like last year was way, 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 way more optimal to bet Niners. And I think the price was better.
Yeah, Niners are carrying over a little. Don't love it. We're an Eagles podcast, I guess, now.
Super Bowl hangover on
Fly
top
high.
of everything, Andy.
Is this what they do?
What?
I watched Angels in the Outfield the other day. Oof. Some of those movies are a lot better when you're 10.
What?
My kid was dying. He was laughing. He'd never seen it before, but boy, it's like, oh, this was Disney. What are we doing? Like, these aren't good movies.
Niners were plus 350 last year when we didn't know if Stafford was going to play. The Kyler Murray was
Purdy
out.
was like healthy.
But yeah, well, that's true. That's a good point. But they were plus 350 last year, and they're plus 244 right now with a tougher schedule and a more competitive NFC. Yuck.
Yuck is right.
Okay. Well, we'll save that for another day.
Another day.
Actually, we're going to save that for like a couple more weeks, right?
Yeah, we will. Our next stop will be the AFC East. So next week we will check you with probably a lot of people's 32nd ranked team, the New England Patriots off the bat. Where does it go from there? Does it go Patriots,
Dolphins, then the Jets, then the Bills.
I'm not sure where the Dolphins Jets fall in between those.
Dolphins, Jets, and Bills are all very tightly clustered.
Either way, it'll be the Patriots and somebody else on Monday, and then it will be the Bills and somebody else on Wednesday. We'll catch you at 7 Eastern for those. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, enjoyed the show. If you had anything we missed or you wanted to talk about, obviously, we're on twitter.com. You can leave comments in the YouTube description. I don't know why I started the promo. I was trying to do the music. Here's the goodbye music. So hope you guys have a nice week. I'm currently
It will be the Patriots and the Dolphins, by the way. Dolphins are
Patriots,
211 to win the East. The Jets are 171 and the Bills are 168.
currently
What a race.
currently walking around Devil's Tower. We should watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind of Prep. I love Devil's Tower.